Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And I'm joined today again by our core developer, Manal Bajani, and we'll be taking your questions. So, as customary, some disclosures. This week we have sold another $1 million of ETH, close to $100, and we're essentially executing a plan that we have for risk management. At this point in time, we don't intend to sell any more ETH. Some updates in terms of what's going on. I was in Cambridge this week, the middle of this week, conducting interviews. I met with several PhDs and people who are, essentially lead developers and such. So that work is ongoing with regards to the launch of Sparkster Labs. So with that being said, we probably only have about 30 minutes today, so we'll jump into questions. So while people propose that, we're taking questions in the Telegram group, so please post your questions in the Telegram group. So Manal, while people are, gathering their questions, why don't you give us, we spoke on Tuesday kind of about the progress of the project and where we stand. Maybe you can reiterate some of your thoughts on where we are and how things are going.
Yeah, so on Tuesday, we discussed quite a bit, that we're going to be starting code releases. Actually, I think we had already released by Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be having our second release early next week, and that's going to contain a lot more than what's currently available on the GitHub. So me and the rest of the team are really excited about this one, and personally, I think you guys are going to like the second code push that we're putting out.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think that, so like we said on Tuesday, I think some of the criticism we've received has been based on things like whether our GitHub account has a description or has photos or things like that, right? Or has a picture. We were judged by the number of lines of code, but we haven't received much feedback on the code itself. The feedback that I've seen so far with regards to the code itself has been very positive. And I think that that's what people should be focused on, right? I don't think you can judge, as I said on Tuesday, I don't think you can judge a person's tweets by his picture or his description of himself, right? You judge a person's perspective and tweets by the content itself. And, therefore, we should judge what we're doing here at Sparkster on the quality of the code and the functionality of the code itself. Manal, you had some thoughts on the number of lines of code. I think you shared a remark from Bill Gates. Maybe you can reiterate that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I always look for in code is quality, right? Because especially nowadays with so many open source libraries available, you can do a lot more and a lot less lines of code. And it reminds me of something that I heard a long time ago. It was a quote by Bill Gates. And he says that judging a program by lines of code is like judging an aircraft building progress by weight. So it gives you that idea that code quality is what matters, right? At the end of the day, the number of lines is just a number, right? But you should look into the quality of the code, and I think we definitely have that.
One of the great things, in my opinion, about one of the great things, in my opinion, from that Tuesday AMA, the Tuesday Tech Tuesday that we conducted, is that we actually looked at the code and we went through the code and broke it down, and we looked at some of the specific choices that we made. One of the questions that were raised is, what have we been doing all this time? And as we mentioned on Tuesday, that a lot of the time went into planning. Planning and design are absolutely critical in a good quality project. So, we went through some of those design choices. We looked at, for example, the signature libraries that we used, how they work, why we chose them, and so forth. So, for a layman understanding or a layman description of, or a non-technical description of really what the code does and how it works and so forth, I do recommend watching Tuesday's Tech Tuesday, or this Tuesday's Tech Tuesday. But if anyone has any questions, technical or otherwise, I'm happy to take them.
Elaborate a little bit on that. So kind of playing on what Saj just said, one of the important things you'll notice when you go through our code is we're using a lot of open source material. So for people who aren't really familiar with it, this means that we're using code which is what they call tried and tested code, right? So it's code that's proven to work. It's code that has, a good track record, and we're using a lot of that code to build our project.
Yeah, and we've talked about this in the past. We talked about how, we're able to move quickly because we're not reinventing the wheel, right? We're adding the value that we bring and our specific contribution to this space on top of what already exists. It's an evolution, not a reinvention, because frankly, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And so this is, we mentioned this in several Tech Tuesdays in the past, and this is a manifestation of that. The benefit is that you end up with a product that's more stable, but also you end up, being able to deliver things quicker. And I think that, some of the things that I've said, I believe, have been taken out of context. So, one of the things I mentioned is that we have a commitment to delivering things, and our motto is that we don't let perfection be the enemy of good, or whatever the cliche goes. So what I really mean by that is that we, rather than spending or planning to create a product that meets every single need and is the ultimate product that people will want, and so forth, and spend a year and a half or 2 years building it and having a delivery date of Q4 2019 or Q2 2020, where some projects have really long delivery times. I think it's far better in terms of value to the community and our ability to grow and develop interest and attract users and customers if we deliver a minimal viable product quickly, right? And so from that perspective, we're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming to deliver value and to deliver essentially the core constructs of the concept as quickly as possible, so that we can get out there, we can collect feedback, we can test it out with users and customers, and we can evolve with customers, not incubating the idea isolated in our own office. It's better that we get out there and get this out to people as quickly as possible. So an article was released, as many people know, this week that I think has taken many of my comments and things out of context, that being one of them. So yeah, what's your thoughts on that philosophy, Manolo?
I do agree with that approach, because I think many times, especially I have a background in video game development, so I'll switch to that for a moment. So a lot of times what I see with video game manufacturers, especially with these large complex games, is they keep them under development for years and years and years, and by the time the games come out, they're no longer relevant, right? So it would have been much better for these developers to release the small updates to the game, and then just change with the user base, right? So that's kind of the approach that we're taking.
It's interesting. I read an article a week or two ago about Fortnite, and it was talking about how the nature of the video game industry has changed, because in the past you bought a video game title, and that whatever that game had in terms of levels and whatever, that was the limit of what you could do with the game. But today the gaming industry has changed because it's forever evolving and forever changing, and kind of demonstrates one of the benefits of the modern approach, as well as why games like Fortnite continue to be so successful years into, I think it's 2 years now into since they were released. So I'm not seeing very many questions in the Telegram group. Manolo, why don't we shed some light on those decision choices and so forth that we made with regards to the code? So, our process, as you know, was that we went through an extensive internal planning process, and then we took our internal plans and then we kind of fleshed them out with experts. So one of those experts being a guy named Alberto Sanino, who's a doctoral research candidate at UCL in the area of security. In fact, he has a specialization in ZK snarks. And so he's one of the people that we worked with to kind of flesh out what we're doing and what our core ideas are. And, if we've missed something or made any incorrect planning decisions, we worked with him to revise some of those things before we went anywhere near developing or coding this. So what was that process like for you?
Right. So that's an important thing that you touched on, because what this essentially means is that by the time we sat down at the keyboard and started coding, like pulling up Visual Studio and the C++ IDE, we already had maybe, I would say, 90 to 95% of the plan, and we had full pseudocode.
Yeah.
Right? So it was a matter of just taking that pseudocode and turning it into, working in C++. Now, naturally, there are modifications and things that you have to make along the way, because, pseudocode is never perfect. But it drastically sped up the development process. Drastically. I mean, maybe tenfold.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And there's an adage that an hour spent in planning is 100 hours in development, and an hour in effective development is 100 hours in maintenance. So I think that we're following the right sort of practices with putting this project together. So one of the things that we demonstrated on Tuesday is we talked about the extent of the network. What extent of the network, what extent of what the white paper covers are we delivering by the end of the year? I think Lorenzo has asked a similar question, so thank you for the question, Lorenzo. How much are we? What does the code that we have built right now? How much? What is it able to do?
Everything that's mentioned in the white paper is currently implemented.
Except the token stuff.
Yeah, except the tokens.
Yeah.
But as far as the network is concerned, everything is implemented and is undergoing heavy testing at the moment.
Yeah. So in fact, there's more than what's covered in the white paper. So if the white paper doesn't talk about masternodes, right?
It's not according to the current spec, right? We've made a lot of changes, I think.
Yeah. So so we're talking about compute nodes, storage nodes, verification nodes, master nodes, all built and interacting and integrating together. And that's essentially the core of the network. That is the network, right? The network is, being able to deploy code, being able to run that code, being able to store the outputs, being able to orchestrate across many different compute and storage nodes. It's all there. So yeah, and in terms of getting this live by the end of the year, you feel like we're still on track for that?
Definitely. I think every day that ticks by with testing, I get more and more confident that we're ready.
Yeah. Yeah. And naturally, so the phase of testing we're in today is really functional testing. We've got a group of people doing functional testing. We've got a group of people doing integration testing. We'll be beginning our own, complete performance testing of the actual net, the main net, hopefully within about a week and a half. So, we think we're very confident in being able to deliver this by the end of the year, in line with our commitments. So yeah. So Jota's asking any news about the meetings in Cambridge this week. So really, I was in Cambridge conducting interviews and meeting people that we would be interested in working with at Sparkster Labs. So I met with several PhDs, several PhD candidates. I had a meeting in the Center of Mathematical Sciences, and then I had a lunch meeting. I had a meeting after lunch. And then I met essentially somebody that we're considering for our team lead, a graduate from Cambridge in mathematics. That was his bachelor's, and then he's been in the industry. He's been a developer, a manager, a team lead for, I don't know, 20, 30 years, something like that, maybe 30 years. He's obviously senior in his age. The only company that stands out from his resume that I remember off the top of my head is that he had a brief stint at Microsoft Research. So yeah, I had an interview. I think I need to interview more candidates before I can really make a decision on that particular role. But that being said, I'm very happy with the progress. We've got 2 recruitment consultants working on bringing us candidates, and I'll be periodically going up there to meet with those candidates and to interview. Updates on exchanges. So no updates on exchanges. We're primarily focused on recruitment, really across the board. Recruitment in marketing, recruitment in recruitment for Sparkster Labs. I have another meeting. I have a brainstorming session with some PhDs in our office on Monday, looking at essentially different deployment mechanisms and use cases that we're going to be exploring with some PhDs from Cambridge on Monday here. Yeah, so a lot of my time is kind of going into recruitment. I'm also meeting next week with some potential people that will be joining us to join our marketing team. So despite what's going on in the markets, at the end of the day, it makes no difference to us because we're we're completely focused, in fact, on building the product, building the company, and really doing what we're supposed to be doing. So yeah, we don't have any further updates on exchanges at this point in time. The main exchanges are essentially, either have drastically slowed down their consideration and listing process or are closed to listing. And given that we're not launching this year, we're staying focused on the things that matter this year, which is recruitment and the product. I'm spending a significant amount of my time every day with the development team, as I should be. And I have to say, I am incredibly proud of the team and what they've built, what they've done, their dedication and commitment and the amount of effort and passion that they're putting into what they're building blows me away. It's I'm honored, in all honesty, to have these guys on my team, frankly. So, that being said, that whatever criticism that's out there, frankly, I don't think it's warranted because, I know the quality of what they've built, and we're slowly beginning to see some other opinions on what they've built. It's phenomenal, and what's been said, I think, is unwarranted. It's not appropriate. It's not right. Crypto Penguin's asking, what's the short-term strategy or plan for after the mainnet launch in Q1 and Q2? Our focus will be essentially customer acquisition and getting people on board to pilot the network in various use cases. That will be one of my primary focuses after the network launches. For the development team, they will be also working on enhancing and extending this for some particular use cases that we have in mind for the network. There's also, like I said, work to do with regards to token integration and such that will be taken care of in Q1, Q2 next year. So that's kind of the short-term roadmap for the product, especially the network.
Yeah, our goal mostly for this year is to release the core of the network to you guys, so that you can start playing around with it, test it, break it, do whatever you want to. And then next year you'll see all the other changes that Saj just mentioned.
Yeah. Mike is asking how many full-time coders and how many full-time business developers are still working for the company. So we've not lost anybody in the team. Every single person that you see on our website, and then a few extra, are still employed full-time working for the company doing what it says that they're doing. We're a heavily development focused team. So, everybody's still there. Everybody's still doing what they're supposed to be doing. In fact, we've grown the team rather than reduced the team. When will marketing start? Well, it really depends on your definition of marketing. In terms of what we're doing, in terms of customer acquisition and such, that process has begun, a long time ago. We're actively speaking to Shabir's job is this. This is what Shabir does all day, every day. He speaks to potential users and speaks to potential people that would be interested in using the network, talks to people about various use cases and so forth, and how what we're doing would work inside of their company, or the benefits of our decentralized network would bring to what they're currently doing. In terms of marketing to main users, to individuals, if you will, that are outside of a business development capacity, that will begin in Q1 next year. Andre, you can ask questions here. Why don't you tell us about the team? What are your thoughts on working with the team, Manawa? I mean, it's essentially you're leading them. Or you're leading the blockchain side of the team. What's your thoughts on that?
It echoes exactly what you said. I thoroughly enjoy it. I think we've got some of the most passionate, some of the most driven people around. And it's an enjoyable experience to work with them. I didn't start out as a team lead when I joined a few years ago, so it's been quite an experience for me. But I'm enjoying it. I really am.
What do you think has people be so driven and passionate about what they do here? What's the secret sauce?
I think there's two things that I think people live for. Right, number one is for their job. They want to put food on the table, right? But there's something so much more than that, right? A job at the end of the day is just a job, But the type of drive and the type of passion that I'm seeing shows me that these are people who actually believe in what we're doing, right? I asked a group of the developers on the team a couple days ago. I said, what do you guys feel about the project? Because I feel like I've fallen in love with the blockchain. And they agreed, like, yeah, we've fallen in love with it, because we're proud of what we've developed, right? So I think that's what drives them. That's really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, in the way that it works and how it functions. For those guys that want to know, I recommend watching the previous, some of the other Tech Tuesdays that we've done. In particular, maybe the one about the masternodes. I personally think it's beautiful, truly beautiful, in its elegance and its simplicity. It's beautiful. Now, maybe we're biased, but
if I may, about the masternode quickly, I think the best thing about the masternode specifically is that there's no human intervention here, right? It's completely up to the machine to vote itself in. And I think it's a very elegant solution to a common problem.
Why do you explain that voting process? Because I think that's one of the things that we're very proud of, is how masternodes vote themselves into being masternodes, and how we keep it secure and how it's trustable. For those people that missed the tech talk on Tuesday.
Right. So this will definitely be explained on the GitHub when we push the second part of the code. But quickly, the way it works is there's a certain point in time in every hour that all these master nodes are allowed to vote. And keep in mind, it's an automated process, right? There's no human intervention. And these master nodes, what they do is they sign a particular timestamp, and then they send that signature over to everybody else. Now, based on that signature, we talk about it more on Tuesday. But based on that signature, you're assigned a number, and then at the end of this voting interval, the 21 lowest numbers are the set of 21 master nodes for that round, for that hour.
So let's break that down a little bit, right? Like, why is it that way? So first of all, we have to come up with a way of ensuring that the people that get elected to become or get chosen to become masternodes is truly truly random, right? Now, one solution to that could be that you get people to generate a random number. But how do you know that that random number is indeed random? How do you know that they created a random number? Now, you could say, well, we gave them the code, so they generated a random number. But, someone could run a master node, modify the code, and then always produce the same random number, and therefore always be elected into being a master node. So we came up with an interesting solution. Master nodes are master nodes for only 1 hour. So there's an election process every hour, right? And what we do is that we know that the start time of that election is, say, 11:45 a.m. And then 12:45, 1:45, and so forth, right? So 11:45 has a timestamp that might be 4 billion, 5 billion, some number that represents that particular point in time. Now, what people do is that they then take that number that represents the timestamp for that current election, right? And they sign it. Now, they take their private key, which represents them as a node, and they sign it. And by signing it, they essentially generate a random number, the signature. I'm sure if when you transfer cryptocurrency, maybe you see the signature that's generated for that particular transaction. So similar sort of thing. You're taking that number and you're signing it, and you get a long number, which is a bunch of random letters and such. Now, what we can do is every one of those letters and numbers, let's say there's letters and numbers, right? So those letters can be represented as numbers in something called their ASCII representation. So all of those numbers that are the representation of the letters and the numbers themselves that are numbers, we add them all up and we come up with a random number that's representative of that signature, which encodes or signs that particular timestamp. Now, when you send your signature plus your private key to another masternode, that masternode can validate that you did, in fact, legally or correctly participate in this vote, because they can verify your signature, because they take your public key, they take your signature, and they take what they know to be that current timestamp, and they essentially send it to the signature library, which validates that it's true. If you previously generated previously generated with a different signature with a different timestamp, it won't verify with the current timestamp that masternode knows, and therefore you won't be allowed to participate in that particular vote. So what we're saying is that we've created a methodology that's extremely secure and very, very safe and trustable as an autonomous way for masternodes to elect themselves in a random way into being the masternodes for the next for the next hour. Now, in the past, we've talked about using SGX, but when it came down to it, what we found was that SGX wasn't stable enough for a production use at this point in time. At least in our own testing, it wasn't stable enough. So we moved away from that and decided to use this methodology until SGX does become stable. And then maybe we'll take this new methodology we've created and run that maybe inside of SGX as a secondary layer of security. But what we have today is something that's extremely secure. So, we talk about how we spent a lot of time focused on those design choices, right? This is an example of, how that design process is incredibly important to the final outcome. It's not about the number of codes, it's about the choices that you make. The number of lines of code, it's about the choices that you make and how you design things. What do you think about that, Manol?
Yeah, I agree with that. This is something that it was one of the major decisions we made, because it was a problem that we were.
Hey, Manol, did I lose you?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you back.
Okay. So
say that again, please.
Yeah. So it was one of the decisions that we were grappling with for a very long time, right? Because in an open source market, how do you trust that the numbers that you're being given are not modified, right? This is one of the biggest challenges with open source is, anybody can go in and modify the code, right? So there has to be
on their own node.
Yeah, on their own node. So this is the important thing, right? So you can take a master node, modify the code, recompile it, and then essentially trick every other node, right? If the other nodes don't have an efficient way to verify you, a secure way to verify you, right? So I think this is one of the biggest decisions that we made was, how do we overcome this random number problem?
Indeed, indeed. So Mike's asking, what's our financial situation? How much have we cashed out? How much do we still hold? How much of that do we hold in ETH or any other asset? So we have today the company is entirely funded by me. Essentially none of the money that we've collected has been spent. However, we have cashed out $1.9 million of the ETH that we've collected. We have not transferred to any other asset. We don't, we shouldn't be trading the ETH. We didn't collect this for trading purposes. Our decision-making process is around risk management, not around trying to make profits. And so it's probably a different in fact, it is a different decision-making structure than an investor would make. So that's our situation. We do not have any financial problems because I'm funding this out of my pocket from other businesses that I own and from the profits of those businesses. Scooby's asking, will tokens be unlocked before the end of Q1? I really don't know. We're waiting for stability before we look at that sort of decision. So we'll keep you updated. I think one of the things that makes us unique as a project is that we're here in front of you every single week, no matter what's going on, right? And so this is a question that you can continue to ask week after week, and we'll be happy to provide you our latest sort of thinking on it. Jota's asking, did I check the info on Binance Gold Label projects recently launched? To be honest with you, I haven't yet, but I want to. So I will do that. Ian, great to have you here. Thank you for joining us. What conferences am I going to next year? Well, the first conference I'm going to is CES, which is at the beginning of 2019. It's in Las Vegas. So I'll be traveling to Las Vegas next weekend. Sorry, I'll be traveling to LA next weekend. But the first week of, I think it's the end of the first week of January or something like that, is CES. It's the largest technology show in the United States. And I'll be going there to potentially, talk to other partners and such that we might be able to partner with. That's the first one that's certainly on the books. There's others that we're looking at, IoT Solutions World Congress and others.
I think CES this year, next year is going to be very exciting. I've been looking at some of the advertisements and things for it. So definitely looking forward to that one.
Yeah. Andre is asking, there's an article going around fudding about the financial aspect of the company, rumors of insolvency and excessive banning or threats against any members who mentioned those issues. If you could clarify this, it would be appreciated. Along with okay, let me take that first question first. The financial aspects of the company. Well, Manor, have you had a missed paycheck?
No, I haven't.
How long have you been working for us?
Oh man,
since 2015, right?
Yeah, I think coming up in March is going to be my 4th year.
Yeah. So no, we don't have any financial issues. Like I said, I'm funding this. I continue to fund the project entirely from my own pocket, from the profits of my existing businesses. The money that we've collected is probably a question that will come. Is for growth. It's expensive to grow a company once there's traction, right? And once things start moving. And so this is why we've only liquidated some of the ETH, because at the end of the day, we liquidate what we conceivably will need for the duration of time that we expect this downturn to last. Why did we sell more this week? It's because of that reason, because if it does last longer, we want to make sure that we've got some protection in place. So I hope that answers your question. Every single person, about $100,000 a month is being paid out of my own pocket. Along with complaints that the current Sparkster chat is turning into a spam engine, I think there were some questions about banning people. Well, we ban people that say things that are not factual. We ban people that say things that are, that just mislead people and create FUD unnecessarily. If you have something to say about us, which, you have a question that doesn't assert an opinion or make an allegation that's not based on fact, we have no problem answering that question publicly. You'll notice I've answered every single question here today in the AMA in the order it was asked, right? So there's no problem with asking questions. It's when people start saying things that are not true. That's when we ban them. When people, disrupt the community, we ban them, because it's not good for everybody else that's in the community to participate healthily. Along with complaints that current Sparkster chat is turning into a spam engine, sometimes I agree. As discussed previously, this environment is starting to discourage some investors from being involved. How can we fix this chat, have more constructive debates, and finally get rid of the spam, especially those who constructively scream Spark to the moon every 5 minutes? Well, I'm going to focus on one part of that, which is how do we have constructive debates and constructive conversations? I think that, these sorts of, I think engagement with the AMAs, which is truly where the meat is discussed. I know that a lot of people feel like, I don't know why, but there's some people who don't want to watch the AMAs, but this is really where as you've seeing today, and with every AMA, this is where the meat on the bone is. And so it would be good maybe if people in our community were able to take some of the things that they liked or enjoyed or thoughts on what they heard and discuss that amongst them, discuss that in the group. That way, I think it will spread awareness of what's going on in the AMAs and also invite constructive conversations. Is Sparkster planning to be a SaaS and license your software to third parties in order to generate more revenue, or will mostly rely on crypto services to generate revenue? So there's really two sides to the house, right? There's the Sparkster no-code platform, and then there's the Sparkster decentralized cloud. The primary mechanism, essentially Sparkster makes money from people using the Sparkster platform in a commercial capacity, right? But the Sparkster no-code platform is free to use in a non-commercial capacity. Essentially as a marketing vehicle, so people find value in it and solve problems in their lives, and then they've got a tool that they can then take to their jobs and say, hey, I use this at home to solve a problem at home. I can also use the same tool to solve a problem at work, and therefore from the same user base we have an income stream. So that's a revenue generation mechanism that doesn't involve tokens. However, when people do create things on the Sparkster no-code platform and want to share them with others, and they want to charge others for the use of the things they've created, maybe they've created I don't know, some home automation system, or I don't know, some integration with a car or wherever it might be, or I don't know, a vegetable garden that's managed autonomously, an IoT vegetable garden that's managed autonomously by our platform, something that we'll be working on next year. Maybe they want to sell that, right? And they'll be able to sell that in tokens. So I hope that answers your question. There are, Mohammed Talha Hassan is asking, there are people suggesting that we'll convert the ICO into an IPO and give shares to token holders. Is that possible? It's not something that we've thought about internally yet, so it's not something that I can say that I can provide any guidance on. Mike is asking, despite the fact that only 3,000 lines of code have been released, a lot of knowledgeable coders are saying that the code is shit. How do I react to this in detail? Manoa, how do you react to people saying that your code is shit?
I completely disagree with that assessment.
Why do you disagree?
Because I was one of the coders on the team.
So you're biased. Is that what you're saying?
That's as simple as it gets, right? I believe the code is quality code. Yeah, okay, it's 3,000 lines, and we've already been over that, right? But it does what it's supposed to do. It functions extremely efficiently. And that's really all there is to say about it. If it does what it's intended to do in an efficient manner, you can't really call it bad code.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to, right? It does what it's supposed to. It does what we said it's going to do. It fulfills the objectives of the network in a tight, efficient, fast manner, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. But I'm going to read a comment from someone who is a developer. This was posted in our community a couple of days ago. So Botch says, and you can confirm this is in our group, for people who are complaining about not having readmes and other forms of documentation, I urge you to look at the documentation within the code itself. What matters at this stage, that's what matters at this stage. README documentation comes post-official release of an API, application programming interface, or the software itself, where devs need docs to be able to interact with the project. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be one, but not necessary right now. I'm sure that any developer could agree with me that the code itself is highly readable and well documented. Adding to that, it's non-monolithic as well as organized. You can, when you jump even deeper, you'll see that the efficient use of various C++ libraries, but that's getting too much into programming. So,
and yeah, that's something that we also talked about on Tuesday. I want to personally thank that commenter for realizing that fact about the code, right? And it's something that we talked about on Tuesday as well, right? That I've gone through a lot of other projects that have so much code behind them that you get lost in the detail. So one thing that we wanted to do was keep our code clean and concise so that you could open it up immediately, search for either the main function or some other main entry point in the program and see immediately at a glance what that code does, right? And we've achieved that.
Agreed. So I think that addresses it, right? At the end of the day, the people that have said what they've said have provided an opinion about things like whether we have a logo on our GitHub or whether we have a README, but they haven't actually looked at what the code itself does. And as I said, this is tantamount to saying to judging a person's tweets by the description on their profile, that the two are not indicative of one another. So that's our opinion on it. I think that what the team has done is world class and is extraordinary in quality. So we do have to wrap up, so I'm going to take a couple of last questions here. Assuming that this is just a fraction of the total available lines of code, if the full mainnet is going to be released at the end of December as originally planned, if not, what's the adjustment in timeline? Nope, the network will be delivered at the end of the year as promised. Right? Andre's last question. One issue I've noticed is your platform is pretty much doing the same thing as Oracle Visual Cloud Building Services, which is a broader use and, to be honest, has a bigger war chest. From the war chest perspective, I would agree with you. How do you plan to compete with them, and what services they offer that we do not, and put us above them to make companies choose us instead? I appreciate the question. Thank you for that. So there's a Forrester report that was released about the low-code industry that says that the low-code industry will be worth $27 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, Forrester said 22, and another agency called Market and Markets said $27 billion by 2022. If you look at Gartner's Magic Quadrant analysis of the low-code industry, the top 3 players in the low-code industry are Salesforce, OutSystems, and Mendix. So if you ask me who do I look to when I compare our product, it's those 3 companies, Salesforce, Mendix, and OutSystems, because we're aiming to lead that industry. We're aiming to lead the low-code space. So what differentiates us from, and by the way, there's a tech talk that's focused just on this topic. I'm quoting from this because of a tech talk we did on this topic. And obviously we have done a lot of research in our own industry, as you can tell. So how do we compare, for example, with the likes of Mendix and OutSystems and so forth? Well, the fundamental difference in what we're creating in Sparkster's no-code platform is that you don't need to think about architecture of software. So it's not just the visual elements of how you build the interfaces and how you define logic. And by the way, in no system can you define logic in plain English. Sparkster is the only system that we're aware of in the world where logic can be defined in plain English, I might add. So our platform is truly accessible to non-developers. If you look at, for example, Mendix, only interfaces can be built by non-developers, but those interfaces don't have any functionality, right? In Sparkster, a non-developer who doesn't know about programming can build an entire application because Sparkster, we invented our own language. And we invented this language in collaboration with a professor who's the chair of computer science at the University of Central Florida, a professor by the name of Gary Levins, who's a PhD from MIT. That particular individual is an expert in programming languages. He's involved in writing Smalltalk and parts of C and so forth. You can look him up and find out more information about him. So essentially, we've created a programming language that's Turing complete in plain English that allows non-developers to be able to build applications, which none of the companies that we've seen on Gartner's Magic Quadrant are able to do. But if you look at the low-code space, what differentiates us is that not just that you can build applications in a visual way, but that we abstract away, we take away the necessity to design the architecture of those applications. So when you look at Mendix, when you look at OutSystems, those sorts of applications, they don't deal particularly well with distribution, meaning you have to have DevOps people to handle distribution for you, right? And if you ask me, if you combine what we enable, that we are a code only when necessary environment, right? And you combine that with abstracting away architecture, I think we're poised to lead the no-code industry, that $22 to $27 billion industry by 2022. So that's my position on it. And just to add a little bit of, a little bit of context, some people come out and say things like, hey, you guys copied MIT Scratch, or you guys copied MIT App Inventor. Firstly, that's garbage. We were inspired by MIT Scratch several years ago, but then we didn't copy anything. We invented our own language. But MIT App Inventor is an ability to build an app for a phone, not distributed cloud software that can serve thousands of users concurrently, that can interact with blockchains and run in a decentralized environment. That's what we have built. So that's my perspective on this. And that being said, I do need to let Manoa get back to doing what he's doing. So we'll end it there. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. Thank you for your wonderful questions. And we will catch you in Telegram. Take care, everybody.